Hi everyone, thank you for coming. We're about to get started. Okay, so we're the Inland Empire Immigrant Youth Collective. My name is Daniela Ramos and I am the organizer with IEIYC.
Hi everyone, I'm Kimberly Hernandez and I am the comms organizer with the Inland Empire Immigrant Youth Collective.
Testing. My name is Marlene. I'm also with IYC, and I'm the communications and grants manager.
Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about rapid response and community defense and how that ties in with mobility justice.
So before we get started, just a little bit about us. We are the IYC, and we are based in Riverside. We service both Riverside and San Bernardino County, known as the Inland Empire region. And so basically what we do a lot of grassroots organizing. Our mission is to engage youth to gain equal access to higher ed, and also professional development to seek justice for the immigrant community. And we do a lot of different like community building events, youth development, so like professional and both like academic. And then we do creativity and artistic expression. So we have wellness events and things like that just to really loop in artivism into our work as well. And we do healing and restoration justice work as well. So a lot of health initiatives that we focus on in California, different campaigns. Like we've done COVID, we've done like the vaccines. And what's the last? Oh, civic engagement and political education. So definitely getting folks into civic engagement, organizing in their communities and being at the forefront of organizing.
Yeah, so we work with a population of ages around 12 to 26, a little bit less, a little bit more. We offer different programmings, one based for high school youth, one based for college age youth, and like Marlene said, we do a lot of different things, but I think this year we focus on community building just because of everything going on. We really wanted to strive for an environment where the youth felt safe and had community to connect with. So that's kind of something that we really have been focusing on this year. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about mobility justice. Our slides are a little messed up. Sorry about that, but so what is mobility justice, right? So maybe you haven't heard about this before, maybe you've partially heard about this, but this is like the definition right here. So it's a framework ensuring all people, particularly BIPOC, low-income communities, disabled communities, have safe, affordable, and dignified access to movement. So moving and traveling without fear of being racially profiled, attacked, or even just like the anxieties that go with maybe traveling to a different place if you have like a disability as well. So some of the things we wanted to touch upon specifically for what we do in our organization is ICE enforcement in public transit. So we have seen ICE often appear in areas of transit, including stopping people in their car, buses, and airports. So they're really hitting all forms of transportation, maybe even people just walking on the street as well. We've seen them stop people in a variety of different places. And it seems like online they might be trying to spread some misinformation about their operations. So when we actually were building this presentation online, there was this article when we were looking up like mobility justice and immigration together, and actually the federal website came up and it was saying like, oh, we actually don't stop people in the buses or something like that. But then you click on the article and you realize it's outdated, and the top in blue says, oh, we actually aren't abiding by this and this like new like administration basically. And so it's kind of tricky because when you were reading it in all of the different like search results, it looks like the federal government's telling you, no, we don't stop people like in public transportation. But when you actually click on it, it's like, no, we do, but this was edited so early on that you can't tell when the date of like editing was done. I feel like I'm confusing, but anyways, so yeah, so if you look it up, it's a little bit odd, and they're just basically trying to spread misinformation about their operations. So that's something we've seen as well. And then organizations are combating this by educating community on their rights and building robust rapid response networks, which is something we're gonna touch upon as we go through the slides as well. And then, so mobility as an immigrant. So this is something like we wanted to highlight. Just maybe you haven't thought about this before. Maybe this isn't like a community you yourself identify with, but maybe you like know people. But these are things that if you aren't part of the community yourself, maybe you haven't thought of before, which is, I think, important to highlight, like some of the barriers or things that people think or have anxieties about when traveling. So one of the things is being fearful of being targeted for immigration enforcement or by police in general. So anytime that someone goes to their workplace, especially in the mornings, around 6 a.m. is when we see a lot of ICE presence in the communities, even getting gas, like anything that has to do with that. People are very fearful of that, and a lot of times we have been telling communities to go get gas at night or even more random times than just like the mornings where they go to work. So that's something that their community is currently fearful of and is thinking a lot about. They're hyper aware of surroundings, so always kind of constantly looking around. Like I've also made this kind of a joke where I say like, oh, sometimes like a gardener's company looks like they have the ICE logo, but it's actually just a company that's like trying to make a living, but sometimes they look very similar. So we'll also touch upon like how to identify ICE vehicles and like other types of immigration enforcement vehicles, because it is a little difficult sometimes, and I think community gets nervous and scared about maybe who's around them a lot, and it can cause like panic and misinformation as well within the community. Also, sometimes another thing is like worried about how they're being perceived. So like, do I look suspicious? Do I look out of place? Is this something like that would jump out to a police officer or an ICE agent where they might think like, you know, this might be a person who we're going to target. And then another big thing as well is language barriers. So language barriers sometimes impacts the abilities to communicate, whether it is with like someone who is driving like buses or in the airports themselves. This can be an issue, and this is another thing too that like can impact how people are viewed. So like if I'm speaking primarily Spanish, like will that put me in a position where maybe I have immigration enforcement on my back more than it would if I was trying to speak English? Or like, do I have an accent? Is my accent visible? These are just things that the immigrant community has to constantly be thinking about when they're in places of transit and in general, just like in the public.
We also wanted to share some statistics. So 14% of the US population is made up of immigrants. And out of those 14%, 32% of transit commuters make up the immigrant community. So we noticed that immigrants rely a lot on public transportation more than other communities. And this is due to many immigrants not having learned to drive or feeling uncomfortable, especially because we know that 31 states in the United States do not allow undocumented immigrants to access driver's license. So this is a mobility issue, right? Like if ICE or police stop you while you're driving and you don't have a driver's license, that's another issue aside from maybe not knowing how to drive. So it's very important to understand how immigrants rely on public transportation a little bit more due to the fact that sometimes they don't have access to driver licenses or even cars themselves.
Yeah, and to touch a little bit more upon that, immigrants are twice as likely to live in a household without an automobile, with the rates increasing if time of arrival is recent. So the more recent a person has arrived to the country, the less likely they are to have a driver's license, the less likely they are to just like be able to provide proper documentation for driving in general, even here in California. And they're more likely to rely on public transportation, whether it's like sharing rides or if it's just more of like going to the buses, or maybe even trying to have a bike as well. And also another thing is like, because maybe some of the people that just more recently came to the country, they might have not learned to drive yet or feel uncomfortable because of the lack of familiarity in their surroundings. And another thing to highlight as well is like, a newcomer to this country will usually be more scared of immigration enforcement, even if, like, let's say we had like someone better in office, you know. There's the fear's still there within the first few years, because they still don't know like the landscape, or like how things are, how people treat them, or like how visibility their status really is, especially with maybe the lack of language knowledge during the first few years of them coming here. And then this is the slide where we wanted to touch a little bit on how to identify ICE vehicles, and we'll go into the agents right after this. But police agencies like ICE use a wide variety of vehicles like SUV, pickup trucks, sedans, vans, hatchbacks. The most common are unmarked vehicles associated with immigration police involving ICE include Ford F-150, so like pickup truck, expedition SUVs. We see a lot of those bigger cars because usually they'll travel in pairs or a little bit more, and then have enough space to like pop people in if they need to inside of the cars as well. Sometimes they'll call for extra support, and we've also seen they travel together. So a lot of the times when we're looking at the cars, we see that there's like a SUV, we see that there's like a Tahoe, and we see that there's like a Sierra, all driving kind of together within the same like spaces. So it looks kind of weird because then you think about it and you're like, oh. And then we also see a lot of tinted windows. So a lot of the times there'll be very, very tinted windows. Again, there'll be unmarked vehicles. And the most common colors for that are white, black, gray, silver, and dark gray, usually more muted tones. Sometimes they will come with their like U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, which is literally like the blue line, and then sometimes like ICE will have the green line, CBP. So that's just something you have to look out for, just because recently they've been using a lot more of unmarked vehicles. So it's important the community kind of understands that. And then within these networks that people have created, especially like a lot of the Instagrams or even some of the Facebook pages, they'll give updates of some of the license plates that have been used in raids that occurred that day or around that time, just to be on the lookout in case someone sees that car again.
Something to also look out for is the license plates. Most of the time, they either don't have a license plate, it will be California exempt, or it would be out of state as well. So if you see a car that matches the descriptions that Daniela provided, and it also has an out of state license plate, a California exempt or no license plate, that is something to look out for as well. Something to know about agents as well is that they will always have a mask on. Here in California, we did pass a law. It's called SB 627, which does not allow them to have a mask. They are not listening to the law. So you will see them with a mask. That is another way to know if it's somebody who is undercover, because they usually cover their faces. Sometimes the vests say HSI, police, ICE, CBP, and you will usually know that it's them because they come in pairs, like Daniela mentioned, but they also will have something that does not look as officially police as an actual police officer. So like these vests, you can tell that it's been like pasted on to the vest to say police HSI, Homeland Security, ICE, CBP. So it's something to look out for. And if you do see somebody with a mask, you are able to report it as well. We're trying our best to be sure that the law is being followed, but as you know, sometimes they will not listen to anybody. So it's a little bit difficult for us, but we're trying to get different organizations together to get that to pass.
So we wanted to touch upon getting connected across cities, like how people build these networks, the rapid response training, the mutual aids. We've seen a great response of this in the Inland Empire. We're in multiple different groups, like signal chats, where people are doing this for their like school districts. We've seen a lot of moms step up, a lot of parents step up. So rapid response training is getting connected across cities, is vital in order to fight injustice and ensure mobility. So there are various organizations hosting hosting legal observer trainings where you can learn how to rapidly spread information across cities. So this is something that's really important because it tells people like where ICE is, like how many people they might have taken, like what's going on, and they've been properly trained, so it's not like they're spreading misinformation. They have the correct knowledge to be able to tell the community what is happening. And this is really important just because people are scared to go out, so the better the information and the faster that it gets distributed, the easier it is for people to be able to continue on with their days a little bit more normally. There's also a lot of community mutual aid happening, so we urge people to join city council meetings, start a parent group, donate time or resources to a person in need. Parents in Riverside reached out to us to train them, and now are leading their own work. They have created mutual aid networks where they provide meals, transportation, aids to the community, and just a lot of different things that people that have been impacted by raids need. We get messages from the Signal all the time. Like I'm always constantly reading it, and like the other day they were talking about it, and they're like, yeah, we raised like, I think it was like $200 for a bake sale to like give for mutual aid. And it's just such wholesome things that are so kind that they're just, you know, doing out of their day-to-day like lives to go out and help people. And they see the impacts a lot because the Riverside Unified School District has seen a lot of targeting around its schools. Just this week when we were somewhere else, but I remember like reading the messages, and they were saying like, oh, I think we were at May Day, actually. It was Friday and May Day. One of the schools really close by, there was a raid that happened, and there was a child left behind. And so the moms like band together, and they were like, we're going to go check it out. Like, we're going to go see what's happening. Like, they interrogated the police. Like, the mom force out here is crazy. Like, they're doing really good work out in Riverside. Like, parents, too. Like, I know there's dads out there as well who are on the ground as well, like, leading this, like, rapid responding. And if they can't rapid response, they'll help with the mutual aid. If they can't do mutual aid, then they'll go to the school board meetings, the city council meetings, like whatever they need to do. And it's just kind of that, like that's the way that networks have started. We have other parent groups in Herpa Valley, which is another part of the Inland Empire, San Bernardino as well, like all these different places that have started their own Signal chats or different groups like that. We usually tell people to use Signal. We feel like it's one of the safer places to be giving this information out. And from there, it kind of just grows. Even like within those mutual aid groups, they also connect like with different orgs and also with different cities. So like sometimes we talk to the Riverside Unified parents about some of the things that the Herpa Valley parents are seeing, because Herpa Valley has also been really impacted with immigration raids. Like they are constantly there as well. So there is information back and forth between the groups, and that's really important because once you start to map out where immigration enforcement is being done, then you kind of understand a little bit of the patterns, which has been like vital to some of the work that we've been doing, especially like some of our partner organizations like IC4IJ, the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice. They are the ones who handle rapid response a lot more, so we've been able to get like detailed reports from them about like exactly pinpointing the locations of ICE enforcement, and those are places that parents will constantly go and like surveillance the area to make sure that it's all clear. Parents have also done a lot of like pickup stations, so if another parent is scared to go pick up their kids that day, then parents will come and say, hey, I'll pick up your kids, I'll drop them off at your house. It's a whole community effort, which is amazing to see.
Yeah, so the way we got these community groups to get started is by giving them a simple training. This training ensures that they are able to help individuals as soon as they notice that something's happening, especially if you're at school and you see one of your kids' parents getting detained, or if you see a kid getting detained, you're able to report it and know the rights of the individual as well, so you can share. And that way, if you are in a position where you can help, you know what to do as well. So the first thing that we teach individuals is salute. And this is something that you will share with the individuals, for example, IC4IJ, who do rapid response. We will provide the numbers at the end. We have them all throughout California, but you want to let them know how many law enforcement officers there are. So there was 5 law enforcement officers at this school today. What are they doing? They are detaining people. They are just standing there. We need to know what they're doing, so we need to know who to send. We need to know the exact location. For example, for us, we have a 215 South past Arlington is something we can say, or like they're right next to the Holiday Inn Hotel, or wherever you are, we need to be as detailed as possible. We also need to know what they're wearing. Are they wearing a mask? Do they have the police vest on? Does it say ICE on the back? And the exact time and date is also very important, so we know if other people are at risk too. If this happened at 7 a.m., we need to know, and the date as well. And we need to know what kind of equipment they have. Are they carrying guns? Are they carrying different tools to hurt individuals? This helps the rapid response team be aware of what's happening and know who to call to help individuals out. Now, if you're going to be trying to help while other individuals get there, you need to know your rights as well. And you can teach these rights to other individuals as well. So the first thing is to gather important and accurate information, so we already know salute, and ask what the community needs instead of assuming their needs. Sometimes we think that they want to be contacting their family, so we're asking them their names, but by asking them their names, maybe you're putting them at more risk. Maybe sometimes it's just asking, what do you need from me right now? Do you need me to call somebody? Do you need me to take your kid home? What do you need at this moment? We also create signal chats that we can communicate with others. Hey, I saw something happening at this school district. What can we do right now to help? And like Daniela mentioned, there are parents next to where we work that are doing that already. Just recently, somebody was detained and individuals came together to like do the bake sale. Or sometimes we need to sell important things to be able to help individuals pay the fees for legal services. So it's important to create signal chats and stay in the loop with other individuals. And then again, get connected with community organizations and let them know how you want to get involved. You don't have to give all of your time, but any time helps as well.
So we wanted to also give a general know your rights, just something really, really basic, and we made it red because this is like usually what you'll find on a red card. So do not speak to I, say I'm exercising my right to remain silent, do not answer questions or provide information about immigration status or national origin, don't sign anything. If ICE agent stops you on the street and they don't have a warrant, then they can't arrest you unless they have evidence that you're a non-citizen. However, ICE agents will try to be really tricky and use almost anything as evidence. So like it could be the fact that you spoke another language. It could be even the fact that you don't want to respond, which is why you have to state your rights, like I'm exercising my right to remain silent under this amendment, and or say something more targeted like that, because if you just stay silent, then that's like another tell that you might be a non-citizen. Also, like, don't run or try to fight. They'll use that as a sign that you might not be a non-citizen, and they'll just take you in for that. You have the right to ask the officers who they are and why they stopped you. So you can always go ahead and say, hey, like, what department are you with? Is there a reason you stopped me? And sometimes we have heard that they say, like, we stopped you for, like, some type of traffic violation. However, they're not allowed to do this. So that's where you can say, hey, like, police officers are the only ones that have the authority to stop me for this. You know, if there's nothing else, like, can I go? And that's something that you do have the right to say. Also, ICE can lie. That's something we tell communities a lot. I know our communities can be really friendly. Like, we're always saying, like, good afternoon, good morning to everyone, or we want to respond. Especially everyone has that, like, feeling within them to respond to authority. Like, maybe if someone just asks you a simple question, but you never know what they're going to twist it into. So always stay calm. ICE will use any reason to arrest you, including, like I said, running. They'll lie to you. They might say that they're looking for someone else and that information that you provide them would help them, but in reality they're just trying to get information about you so that they can use it as a way to prove that you're a non-citizen. They can use anything against you, even from like the smallest things to like the biggest things as well.
So if you are detained, sometimes they will try to come to your house, maybe your car or your job, and they will tell you that they have a search warrant. You have to be able to know what a valid search warrant looks like, especially if you're trying to help somebody that may not speak English or read English. You need to know what to look for in a search warrant. So the one that they will usually provide you is the one that's not valid on the screen. That one will typically not have a signature. It's just a paper that says, I am authorized to search you. But there is no authority into it. It's a paper that anyone can print, and they do it on purpose to confuse people. The one that is a valid search warrant is the one that is on, I think, your right. And this one is signed by a judge. It has to be signed by a judge all the time. They can't say, well, we signed it or somebody else signed it. If it's not signed by a judge, it is not a valid search warrant. It also has to say United States District Court on the top and have the individual's name on it as well. If it doesn't have like the place they're searching, the individual's name, or a valid signature on there, they are not allowed to use it. Another thing to look out for as well is the date and time. Sometimes maybe they had an old search warrant that they had around and they'll use it, but you have to make sure it says like 2026. If it's saying like 2011, maybe it's not valid anymore. So it's always little things that they like tweak to make it look valid and to detain individuals. But if it doesn't have the judge signature, the date, and United States District Court on the top, search and seizure warrant, it is not valid.
Just to add a little bit too, like sometimes it'll be almost your name, but not really your name, you know? So it'll be like, let's say my name's Daniela Ramos, and then it'll be Daniela Ramos, and then maybe it'll have like an initial that's like not mine, or a different last name, or a last name that's so similar that if you didn't look twice, it looks like your name. Same thing with the addresses, like maybe the address is like 3850, but they had 3851, and the one makes such a huge difference because that's not you. Theoretically, like they're not, like even though they're saying they're looking for you, it's like that's not my correct address, that might not be my correct full name. Even then too, like if they don't cite your like full documented name that you go by government wise, like in your IDs, then it's just not valid. So that's something definitely to look out for as well. So we wanted to give you guys some of the rapid response hotlines in the areas and in different counties. Use salute to report ICE activity. If you see something, say something. If you suspect immigration enforcement activity, call the hotline. We have the Inland Empire hotline, but we also have like Central Valley, Kern County, different spaces, Sacramento, Santa Clarita. We have like a lot of them. There's a lot out there, but there's also groups that will do their own within like blocks or within like school districts. Like it's really about just kind of looking out and seeing what's out there. We do presentations. I know other organizations do presentations, and that's kind of where community comes together and forms their own. For example, like the Riverside Unified School District one got formed at a presentation that we gave at a bookstore, and that day they were like, how can we like get this started? They had forms ready for people's like numbers and signals chats, and that's kind of how that got started. So it really does just happen with community coming together in these spaces, learning a little bit more about rapid response, like how to identify vehicles, agents, knowing their rights, and then it goes into creating their signal chats, like getting connected with their communities, helping who's most vulnerable, and like listening to what they have to say as well.
Alrighty, so that's all that we're presenting today. We did want to open up the room for any questions or any concerns that you may have. We also have our contact information on here if you do want to get connected with us and ask more private questions as well. And we have our social media as well if you just want to know what we're up to and how you can get involved as well.
Okay, so did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning. Buenos días. Roman Partea Lopez with the Greenlanding Institute. Thank you so much for this great presentation. Got a lot of great resources here. And thank you also to GRID who helped facilitate this and having this be part of this convening today. As I think this is a very important issue that I think for many years stakeholders, advocates who are in this space have been asking to better integrate some of the social issues that are happening around us to be integrated into these types of conversations. So really appreciate that. One question for you all in thinking about some of the information you shared, especially around transit use and what's happening within transit, right? Just curious if you could talk more about how that advocacy, right, with that transit agency has looked like, right, to help push back to make sure that they're being protected, right? I know some services like in Metro and others have, security support, right, and so curious like how those conversations have gone. But to tie it to here, I'm curious if you all have been engaging with the Air Resources Board at all in sharing some of these resources or having CARB be mindful of what's happening in our communities as they deploy some of their programs, whether that be car share or some of the other programs they have. And just curious of how that conversation has gone with those state agencies. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think when it comes to the airport situation that just happened recently, there is a lot of advocacy that's going into it, and we're trying to get individuals on the ground there's individuals that we know that work at airports that are giving us information of like what they're doing. From our knowledge, ICE agents were sent to the airports just to scare individuals. I think there was a few detainments, but it was prior to the ICE agents being sent out. And I think it's all fear-based. I think it's the same thing with the Metro. And if we're being quite honest, sometimes these institutions don't have really good reception with us, and they don't want to hear us out. I know Metro sometimes have said that they will not care if ICE agents are on there because they have the right to be on there. And it's a conversation that we have back and forth. I think it depends on the area as well as who do you know to get individuals to listen to us as well. So I think that's like the most important. The more people we have basically on the inside that can like help us advocate for immigrants, the better. In terms of CARB and just electrical vehicles, we do have some organizations in the IE that are doing that kind of work as well. And I think it's all very intersectional, so we do try to consider that. But I think it's also very important to consider that as individuals who are here today and realize that if you are trying to push the electric vehicle, how do we do it so it's inclusive of all? And I think that's a conversation that we are definitely having as of recently too. Especially like we said, sometimes immigrants don't have access to cars. So how are we supposed to make that move to clean mobility if we have an issue with mobility as a whole?
Just to add a little bit onto that, in terms of community, like another thing that's been happening a lot is that people have gone out of their way to like help others get transportation right now as well. So like if people are scared to drive, usually what we say is like if you're scared, then make sure someone who has like documentations behind the wheel. That way it's a little bit easier, especially if you're going to an area that's I guess a little more prone to these attacks and raids. Same thing with flying. Like most of the time we do advise community to be careful with that. We most of the time like have community not fly anymore recently. Also with the Real ID if they don't have their passport. But again, like using a passport's another way of maybe like othering yourself, you know, especially if it's not like the U.S. Passport, it's like the Mexican passport or like another country. So that's been an issue for a while, even a little bit before. I guess it started kind of around the same time that Trump came into office, but even before that, we were already kind of navigating that space because of the fact that like people were having to use their passports for the Real ID, but it would already other them a little bit more as well. So I think communities have stayed away from flying even before we saw immigration agents at the airports, just for that reason alone. And then as well for like buses, when a lot of that was going on, especially like in the Orange County area, that was happening a lot where we did hear like, ICE agents are coming into the OC buses. And I remember community like stepped up and they're like making chats as well of like, you know, I can give rides from here to there if it's school related, if it's work related, like people who maybe were stay-at-home moms or other parents who were stay-at-home or work from home would take the time to try to drive people to places. So that's another way like community combats transportation a little bit, but you know, again, like as Kim said, like it's just that lack of access even from before like the raids and stuff like that that is impacting as well.
Hi, my name's Cesar. I'm with Clean Mobility Options Program, the administrator for that. And thank you for your presentation, and I agree with your statement earlier. I'm definitely looking for resources to bring in to the program that we're administering because we are in these communities. And to me, this is like an important resource to have. And we definitely have within the Clean Mobility Options program, we have ways to make sure that we're educating our awardees and making sure that there's a space for that. And that's through our Clean SEMEA, which is what we have like work groups and important ways to connect all the awardees and other communities. And I think this would be a good resource to have to come in to make sure that like we're all kind of understanding the world that we're living in, and we're all able to like point to the resources and the people that are doing the great work for that. I had a question. Is there, looking at all the rapid resource groups, is there an entity that's kind of bringing them together, at least some sort of coalition that's kind of holding that group to like maybe kind of make it more interconnected, as you know, because I could see like I live in LA, so I know that like I have my own rapid response group that I'm connected with, but I'm wondering if there's like a link between all of them.
Speaking specifically for the Inland Empire in our area, I would say yes. We have the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, which was already a coalition effort, but now has become also like a rapid response hub. And I'll say they hold coalition meetings, and they do invite like most of the very well known, or like more of the groups that we try to work with often are the ones that are like posting on social media, or like community have like great access to, and also like respond first and have like their own miniature groups. We always try to have them involved in the conversations. So I would say for our area, yes, like there is, especially because the Inland Empire is so big, and then the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, or IC4IJ, also has an office in Coachella Valley. So San Bernardino County and Riverside County are like super big. So it has been crucial to coordinate within all of them, because from literally like where we are in Riverside to maybe like Coachella, it's like, you know, a long drive. So we do have people who are trying to bridge that constantly. But I'm not too sure for some of the other areas as much, but I don't know.
I can chime in a little bit. So we have the Shutdown Adelanto campaign. So this campaign is centered around shutting down the Adelanto Detention Center, which is one of the biggest detention centers here in California. And in this coalition, we have organizations from all across California coming in together. We do have some environmental justice coalitions coming in with us. We have immigrant justice coalitions coming into this campaign. So I think a lot of the issues that we have are interconnected, especially because if you may or may not know, San Bernardino has one of the worst air quality in the country, I think, not just the state. So it's a lot of work on trying to get clean mobility, trying to get better resources for our communities, trying to fight immigrant justice as well, and just things like that come together when we do campaigns.
Actually, we got really close to shutting down Adelanto. It was, I think only 1 or 2 people were there maybe like a year ago, and now it's over capacity. They even have like the annex full and everything. So it is a crazy time. There is a lot of people detained. They're detained in horrible conditions. And it's really horrible because it was so close to being shut down. And actually, the organizer with IC4IJ that works on this was working and is still kind of currently working towards Adelanto was supposed to be a just transition space as well. So that was something that they were working with. It was supposed to just go back to helping the communities and becoming a community space where like communities might find like another third space or a green space. Like this was something discussed that was like so close to being like what our new reality was, but then unfortunately now it's over capacity. Like the coalition had to take a little break even to reassess what we were going to do, because of the fact that it's just in this moment with what's happening, it's not very viable to keep advocating for its closure like so quickly. Like we have to continuously do that constantly, and we were so close already, but now we have to build back up from where we started and kind of go ground zero again. So coalition meetings have started again this month, and are consistently trying to I think everything right now in immigration justice is very rapid response based. So I feel like that's what I'm trying to get with this. Like even for Adelanto, like we still are working towards shutting it down, but unfortunately, because a lot of our efforts are going towards making sure people aren't dying like day to day, making sure people are getting like their basic needs met. So I feel like that's what's taking center focus in a lot of the spaces in immigration justice, even though we were so close to shutting it down and are continuously working towards that in the long term.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. This was really, well, really important, and also I learned a lot, so thank you. I'm Brett Zuner with the Foundation for California Community Colleges, and we're an access partner and also do outreach for a couple of the incentive programs. So we're doing outreach events a lot, either organizing them or just attending them. And something I was thinking about while you were presenting and then tried to like do a quick Google thing about was if an event is considered private, then they would need a warrant to enter the event. But I think traditionally we've really tried to make events open to the public and reduce as much barrier to entry as possible for the events. But in hearing your presentation, thinking about it, I think maybe we all need to like rethink that a bit. And I'm wondering for you all and like people in the room, in this moment, I'm like, it seems worth it to add a little bit of a barrier to entry for an event. Like you have to pre-register, but you can register on the spot. And it seems like that would make it so they need a warrant to enter the event. Or if they arrested someone at the event and didn't have a warrant, then that could be invalidated because it was private. But if we don't do things like make pre-registration or things like that, then it could be considered public, and then they didn't need a warrant. So I'm thinking like if we did a ride and drive, how do we make it still accessible, but also make it really difficult for them to have any like legal standing if they do try to do anything at the event? So there's some thoughts that I'm having, and I'm also wondering from your perspective, being experts on this and like being in the field, if an event was advertised as like need to like pre-register and law enforcement needs a warrant to like, is putting that on event signage or in communications a good thing, or is that scary, or is it like good because it sends a message like, oh, okay, whoever's putting this event on is like thinking about like keeping law enforcement out, or rather if they're needed they'll be asked to come, but we don't need them unless we tell them to come. Does that make sense? Or okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we agree. I think it's very important to try to make events private when possible. And we have been doing the same thing. If it's like an art party where it's like youth centric, you do need to pre-register and ensure that individuals give at least their name. We don't want to also scare individuals and ask for like their address or things like that. But just so that we know who's coming and like it's a little bit more private. And like you said, there's no legal ground for individuals to get detained. I would suggest putting a eyes out sign outside of your office or wherever the event is being hosted, and that lets individuals one know that they are safe there, but it also would let an agent know like these people will fight you if you come in and tell you to leave, because we are letting you know with the sign on our door that we do not allow ICE agents to come in here. I will also say that it's very important for everybody to have a plan. We have our own plan in case something goes left. What do we do? Who's the main individual who's going to talk to the ICE agent? How are we going to proceed? How are we going to ensure that everybody at this event is safe? So it's very important to go back to your organizations or wherever you work and say, hey, I want to implement a plan to help individuals. And if something were to happen at our office, how do we ensure that people are safe? Another thing I did want to mention, we just had May Day, which is a public event. It's a march that we do for labor rights, and that was a very, very public event that we do every year, but we did have legal observers there. And again, we had a plan to ensure that everybody there was safe. So I think it's very important to always do that as well.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I have kind of a related follow-up to that. So my name is Brian Matsumoto from Nature for All in Los Angeles. And I was gonna ask kind of about like strategies to adapt events or outings to keep communities safe from ICE. Our organization is all about serving park poor, often immigrant families, getting folks out to nature for healthy, healing access. And so for us, we've had to do like a lot of adapting and coming up with protocols and things. And it has been tricky because at times we've had to do like, oh, hold the, outdoor something event indoors on Zoom. It's like the total antithesis of what we want to do. I will say there have been raids like very close or at like park sites that we've been trying to go to, and we've had to like really rapidly get folks out. Staff at county parks have been super supportive. They have protocols already, which is awesome. And we had a park event outside our national forest where, we had community alerts of like raids coming to the area, and we had to keep folks on a bus and different things like that. But one question I had, because when you're talking about like the early morning targeting, we're in Nature for All gearing up to create like LA's first bus route to the mountains, hopefully by next year, the Mount Wilson Express. So, as you shared, like our target transit riders are immigrant families. So we're like, are we turning this into like a target also for ICE? And should we be trying to kind of schedule people more in the mid-afternoon? Like, does that even make a difference, say, for field trips and outings?
I think as long as it's advertised a little more privately in terms of the community that you're like targeting or want at the event, I would say like the raids that happen usually at that around that time happen at very specific locations, more of like people going to their work or people who are working already, like day laborers or people who are already working on construction early in the day or like gardening. A lot of time are already outside at that time or getting their tools from their trucks. So that's what we've seen in terms of raids in the mornings. Also gas stations, like we've seen a lot of gas stations happening around that time. So it's more about, I feel like it's more about catching people when they're going to work or just arriving to their locations, especially if it's an open space, because they know like the population's vulnerable, they're getting ready, they're thinking about other things. So I feel like that's kind of why that's happening at that time.
I can chime in a little bit as well. I think it's very important to have a lot of eyes on the ground, regardless of what you're doing. I used to work for Active San Gabriel Valley, and we did a lot of stuff on the ground as well. And I think the most recent active streets that we had, we shut down like a lot of the blocks in El Monte to help individuals have access to like clean mobility. They had their bikes out there, but we also had a lot of employees. I think we had like 50 of us out there just keeping eyes on everything. It was a long route, but it was worth it to have so many people on the ground just seeing if everything's okay, like making sure there's nobody stepping in and like trying to scare individuals or trying to detain anybody. So I think it's always just important to have people on the ground that know how to spot individuals that may be ICE agents and have like a process like, okay, like I just spotted somebody, let's have a chat going on and know what to do in case of that. Because even if it is like we're not a target, we're not early in the morning, it can still happen. So it's important to have individuals there that can like keep an eye out and make sure that everybody's okay.
I want to hear a little bit more details about what your plan was on May Day. Oh, hi. By the way, Jasmine Rocha, you guys know me. I invited them. They're from my city. Represent Riverside, Access Clean California. Just more details about the safety plan you guys had in place for May Day, just because I like to hear some of those more granular details, so that way I can share with my community partners, and I know some of them are in the room, share with their like local networks as well.
Yeah, I can share a little bit. So for May Day, every year we have different meetings to prep for that. And one of them is the one that we do for logistics. In that one, we ensure we have a lot of legal observers with us. So these are individuals who work in the legal department overall. And what we do, have a route that's pre-planned. So we ensure that we know where we're going, we know where community is going. And two, we have a plan that's prepared in case something goes left, we can go to a different route. So it's, so sorry, I have like a cough. It's very important to have a plan in place for that and ensure that individuals know like plan A, plan B, plan C. So we had the legal observers, and then we also had individuals who, what was Angel's role, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, we had security, we had legal observers, we had the people that like stand on the side. What is it? Is it legal observers who do that? The ones that are like on the side that like.
I think those are legal
Okay.
observers,
Yeah, and then we also had like the police liaison. So we have like multiple people and layers. And then the other thing that's done is like they surround people as we walk. So like there was people at the front, there was people all to the sides like guiding us, and the people guiding us through the route were also the first like line of defense. So like they all kind of made like a chain around everyone walking, and there was also people in the back. So and in the cars. So we had like a lot of people pretty much everywhere. We had people in the cars, we had people walking, we had people front, back, we had legal observers, we had most of the rapid response team, not all of them because they were still rapid responding in other places, but we had a lot of the rapid response team volunteers there. We had a lot of people who were the security, and then we had the police liaisons too, just in case like ICE or police showed up. Then we also had them that were designated to talk as well.
We also had people going to the route first, so everybody was marching together, but we had like 5 to 10 individuals way in front of us, making sure that the route was clear for us too. So it was a lot of planning, but I think it was maybe like 8 organizations planning it together, and from those 8 organizations, we had like 50 people observing to make sure like no one was like in danger.
Yeah, and I think ours specifically, I think part of the reason we also had so much like people on the ground was because one of our stops was in front of the San Bernardino Department of Homeland Security office. So we did go there, and we were outside chanting for a really long time. Like, yeah, and we had speakers who were impacted, and we told everyone, that's another thing, like, community should know what they're getting themselves into at all times. They should be informed so that they can make that informed decision themselves. Like, for example, we did tell community, this is the route. We are going to the Department of Homeland Security right in front of there. Like, we don't expect there to be interactions. We don't expect there to be vehicles, but we never know if this is a risk like you're willing to take to come out and protest and support and talk for this day. Like, you know, we are here for you. We will do everything that we can to keep it safe. I think sometimes there's this narrative of like being the voice for the voiceless, but actually like a lot of immigrants aren't voiceless. They actually want to talk. You just have to give them the space and allow them to, because they do have a lot of courage. A lot of people who are undocumented or mixed status were there that day, and a lot of them were the ones who were speaking up on the truck. So if you give you know, it's always about that consent information and letting people know what they're getting themselves into, still putting all of that security in place and still having the best. And everything went really well. We had, everything was well planned out. We planned it for a long time. Everything was intentional. We didn't do any mass disruption other than like being on the side and like chanting and doing the talks. There was talks of that, but we were like, you know, there is impacted community coming, like that's pushing it a little too far. So we just didn't do that, but that was like something a little bit talked about as well.
Yeah, so we were unarmed, but everybody who was part of the security team has some sort of form of security training already. So some of them were executive directors who have done this for years. Some of them were individuals who work in legal departments and know their rights, and like they are able to provide that legal service if we needed it. So it's individuals who have been doing this for years, but it wasn't anybody who was armed. It was just us making sure that the community was safe. No, it was just us as the 8 organizations planning Mayday, bringing in our own team to help with this.
Jeff Wardle with Mobility Futures Alliance. Thank you for a great presentation and for obviously the really important work that you're doing. So I wondered whether the data that you're seeing in your work, you can tell us whether the ICE activity across and around the state is on the increase, particularly in numbers of detainments, and also whether the ICE strategy is getting more sophisticated or deceptive.
I can get started. So we started seeing ICE activity increase a lot in June of 2025. I think that's when like LA was hit really hard, and then we've moved into like major cities all across the United States. Recently, we've seen more trends at court sites. So if you're going to your court date, there's people waiting outside for individuals, even if they're in proceedings to get legal status. So I think that's like one of the deceivements they've done a lot. They know these people are in legal proceedings, and they're still going to these court services to detain individuals. So that's something we've seen more recently. But about like 1 or 2 months ago, we've seen them back on the streets again. I think it has become a little bit more deceiving as well. They will tell you that they know you're undocumented. I've seen some cars have stickers on the back like mom driving or something like that, that's like deceiving, or saying like, oh, like a baby on the car, like so you don't think it's ICE, and then they will detain you. So I feel like recently it has become a little bit more deceiving, especially they will track individuals and follow them around their houses for weeks before detaining them. So they keep an eye on you for a while before going to your place. But yeah, I think for a while we were seeing more individuals at courts, and now they're back on the streets again.
I was gonna add a little bit onto that. Like, we have also been seeing a lot of surveillance. Like in the Ontario area, there's been a lot of cars. Like they'll just line up and like sit there for hours, and then do that repeatedly, and then eventually we'll see some type of immigration enforcement in that area. But it's like they're gathering intel. And then the other thing recently too, we've talked about this, that they're changing cars. They're actually starting to use different models as well. We're still like trying to get more data and like things like that. But we saw things like quote unquote like calm down a little bit, but only because they were like doing certain tactics like the courts and things like that. But they are back on the streets, and we are seeing them like changing cars recently. We are seeing them doing a lot more surveillance before they actually like strike. And yeah, a lot of that has been occurring recently. But as for future trends, we're still waiting to see, because sometimes it can be a little bit unpredictable. It's kind of about just like being out and surveillancing, and this is something that people do day to day. Like a lot of the rapid responders are there day to day. Sometimes they'll go before their work, so they'll do a round before their job, and then they'll go to work, and then they'll do a round after. Then you have like the midday, like it's almost like a shift thing. Like as people go to work, they will sometimes go and do their rounds first and then go to work. Some people work later, so then they'll do rounds like in midday and then go to work, or it just really depends on that. If there's sightings, like different community members go and try to verify or like debunk that, things like that.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to mention, we've noticed these flock cameras going around everywhere. So these are supposed to be for transit like reporting, so like if you're speeding or more like transit enforcement, but we have been seeing ICE enforcement use it to surveil people. So these are showing up like all over the state, all over the country as well. I know Riverside has some, LA has some. I don't know if Sacramento has some just yet. I think they do as well. But yeah, we're seeing them pop up more, and they're deceiving you in the way that they're saying, oh, it's just for transit. We're ensuring that people are driving on the speed limit. We're making sure people are not taking the carpool lane instead of the regular lane. But they're using it for ICE enforcement as well.
Hi, this is Mayra Pelagio, consultant for emerging mobility with the City of San Jose. I wonder if you have any insights. I know that an individual, if they're stopped in their car, they have the right to not be searched, and they can exercise their right. I wonder if you have any insight or thoughts or ideas on how, or if at all, bus drivers or any other public transit, I guess, workers can exercise that right, and how could we maybe build a movement to make sure that these like transit agencies have the tools so that there is no detention within their service lines?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think for public transportation, due to the fact that it is public, it is a little bit more difficult because they technically have the right to be on the bus. However, I think if we did want to build a movement around this, it would have to be like talking to the bus entities themselves, so like Metro, Amtrak, like having them put out a statement that they will not allow ICE agents in there. I think so far I have not seen that happen just yet, and I wish we can like all come together and fight for that. I think that's like one of the steps we want to take. It just, like I said, we need more people on the inside to be able to do that, since it is a public entity. And I think Amtrak or Metro taking a stand on that, or even the Sacramento public transportation system, it would really like pave the way forward for other public transportation systems to do the same.
I know some of them, I think Greyhound has it on their website that they won't allow ICE agents in, and some places will have that. But it depends again, like it really does have to be like efforts and intersecting things within different like coalitions of people and spaces to be able to get the work done.
Hi. Thank you for the great presentation. My name's Jordan. I'm with the Driving Clean Assistance Program on the outreach side. So we've been really, concerned with our partners going out into the communities and them feeling threatened, and community members are hesitant to go out to events or talk to folks or, even apply because they're giving personal information, and it's just a scary time. I was just curious if you guys do trainings. I think you could be very useful, at least for our partners who are in these communities, to kind of get what we just saw or even more, and kind of integrating some of the tips you had into their strategies so that community members feel safer while commuting. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, we do some trainings. We do, I think, very like introductory ones. We cater them a lot to depending on the population we present to. So we have some that are more kid friendly, like around the ages again of like middle school, high school, and then we have like our college level, or we present to educators a lot. But a lot of the ones that we do is kind of like an intro and like a setup to then get like a formal training from IC4IJ, which is the people that train the rapid responders, and do that. And we do that ourselves, but it's more informal. They're the ones who have like the more large like training sets that they conduct with the community a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah, so we can do something similar to what we did today and just brainstorm together as a community, like, okay, how do we move forward? How do we ensure that people here know their rights? What Daniela was mentioning, IC4IJ will make you a legal observer. So it's like, if I see eyes, what do I do? Who do I report to? And like they give you access to like their hotline, so you can directly be like a dispatcher if you really want to. So that's like the difference. It's if you want to be like on the inside answering the hotline, or if you want to just be a community member like doing the work on the ground.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, I was wondering, what is the messaging for youth that you use around all of this?
Yeah, so we try to focus. Well, a lot of the youth that we deal with is pretty impacted most of the time, so they already kind of have a sense of it, so it doesn't feel like we're presenting anything scary to them because their realities are already a little scary, so it's not something that they don't want to hear. It's actually something that they find really beneficial. So we usually go in with the basic know your rights of like in the streets, in cars, in workplaces, and at home. We leave the workplace one kind of smaller, and just in case they want to give that information to their parents most of the time. But we do focus in on school. So what we say is like, these are your rights here in California to be able to get a public education regardless of immigration status. We let them know about, there's two things that just passed. One of them was talking about how all schools need to have a preparedness plan in case ICE is near their campus, and teachers aren't allowed to interfere bodily, like if an ICE agent attacks basically or like pushes past them, but then that will trigger a protocol of sheltering in place essentially, as if there was like a stranger on campus. So teachers are supposed to lock the classrooms, like turn off the lights, like hide the students essentially, and that's kind of what triggers if ICE goes fully into the campus, and that's something that's being implemented right now. And the other thing too is it's just difficult, and I think it's scary because we try to tell them like what happens as soon as I step out of the school campus, which is when they're like more nervous about, because they know school is like safer, you know, they're more protected, and we haven't seen too many instances of students being taken. It does happen. Sometimes a student who might look a little bit older, like in Harupa Valley, this happened one time where someone who was very young, like I believe they were either 16 to 18 in that age room, and they were detained for a little bit as well because they looked a lot older, and I don't know if they were a newcomer or if they only spoke Spanish, like I'm not sure, but they were very young. So it does occur, but we usually try to let them know, like, you know, if something happens, like come back to school, like, you know, if your parents can't pick you up, like, you know, we have different people you can call, you can always message us, like we have chats with them through WhatsApp and other like signals where they also connect with us if we need them after they've done our programming, or we just go and present. And yeah, but it's centered a lot around like school and what their rights are, and like how to advocate for themselves, like how to find the I guess like the confidence to be able to tell like a teacher, hey, like I'm scared in this moment, like I need your help, or I'm seeking these resources because like I need them for this. So we just kind of try to focus it a lot about yeah, finding the confidence to be able to advocate for themselves, like knowing their rights so that they're informed and can do what they need to do, and just be as safe as they can. So that's usually how we do that. But students, especially those impacted by different types of issues, especially these issues, understand a lot more than like maybe sometimes we give them credit for. So it's a lot easier than you would think to have these conversations with them, because they do already have a lot of these fears or anxieties, and a lot of the time like they have been helping their parents for a really long time. Like sometimes they're mini adults in a way, because they've been helping translate, they've been helping fill out paperwork, they've been helping with the other like family members in the household. So they're definitely equipped to be able to take this in and defend themselves and their family members.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is we do all that work, which is amazing, but we also like reminding the youth to take care of themselves and how mental health is so important. They are like their own little power fields. They're so powerful and they do a lot of work, but we're also like, take a break. It's okay to just be a kid sometimes, and I think that's very important as well. But yeah, thank you so much for the question, and thank you all for coming today as well.
Just quickly to add, yeah, we've been working with a lot of different principals as well. Like most of them have been responding really quickly, but it really depends on the area that you're in, the principal that you're dealing with, which is the issue. Because for Riverside Unified, like I know we've had good contacts, and the parents will call the principals all the time, like, hey, this is happening right outside your school, like we need you right now, you know. And most principals have been receptive, but there are some where like situations have occurred in our area too, where like educators or principals have said things a little bit out of turn. Like even students have recorded. We had a moment that went a little viral in one of our areas as well, about an educator like saying something to students about like, oh, it's not the right way and things like that. So this is something that happens. It just really depends, but they should be held accountable, and they should be doing everything to protect their students regardless of the student background. So
thank you all so much for coming today. Let's do another round of applause. We are out of time, so it is lunchtime. You can find your food in the main ballroom where we were for the first session. Thanks so much for coming.
Power to decaf. We'll begin here in just a moment. Come on in, free seats up front. All right, you guys ready? Yeah. The party going?
Yeah, we're ready. Don't we look?
The zebra kind of got me.
It's like,
All right. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's session on trust. I'm going to take some liberty, by the way. Okay. My name is Larry Riera, and I am staff with the California Air Resources Board, and I'll be moderating this panel. We're very fortunate, very blessed, very honored to have this panel, the panel complexion, and I'm looking forward to the discussion that will be taking place. We will open it up for questions at the end, both online and in the room. With that, let's go ahead and begin. And we'll do self-introductions, and then we'll get into some prepared questions, if you will, and follow that conversation for a little bit and see where it takes us. We'll do this organically. How about we start with Adriana?
Hi, my name is Adriana Smith, and I am an air pollution specialist with the California Air Resources Board. I have been working on statewide incentive programs for the last 2 decades, and currently I work for the Community Air Protection Program with the AB 617 bill. Thank you.
Brittany?
Hi, everybody. My name is Brittany Carpenter. I am the Director of Sustainability and Innovation at the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce. And what does my life look like? We do multimodal, so we have a bike library system, we have a car sharing system, we have a van pooling system, as well as some cargo trucks and vans that we rent out to our businesses as well.
Hey, young, Choyahwe, Jill Sherman Warren, Haidet, Natinukwe, Natanuk, Sitianuksan. I'm really happy to see everyone here today. It does my heart good. And my name is Jill Sherman Warren, and I'm from the Hoopa tribe, which is where all the trails begin and return. So at some point, you might find yourself there. I am also the executive director of the Native American Environmental Protection Coalition, which is celebrating their 30 years of being a nonprofit that is directed and guided by the 31 member tribes. So we have 31 member tribes who give me the walking orders of what I do. I also am born and raised in Hoopa on the reservation, and have served my time. Sometimes it really felt that way. Served time as a tribal elected official for my tribe. And so I have been working in tribal spaces, doing outreach and other efforts since I was 4, so very young. No. I don't want to add 2 decades. But been doing this a long time, having a lot of fun, and trying to keep it as real as possible. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Jill. A little bit of framing at the beginning here, and transparency as well. This has been a phenomenal experience from this staff person's kind of going through it, if you will, with the panelists, and the evolution of the concept of trust and what trust means. So I want to spend a little time there so that we can all sort of have it resonate with each one of you, and then understand the remarks by the panelists and come to a better understanding. So first, trust in a real simple definition of a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. I'll leave that one there. I also looked up what trust had in terms of images. So what does that look like graphically, trust? And most of the images were around a handshake or hands or sort of signified in iconic fashion, collaboration, but it also indicates sort of intimacy and touch, which are not things you typically associate. The other part of trust, of course, is in the financial world with respect to wills and estates and things like that, but we can omit that for our discussion if you would like. The reason I spend time with this is because in the evolution of the concept of trust, as this panel was designed in partnership with Emergent Labs, is trust as infrastructure, trust as partnership, trust as foundation. So this panel and staff and supporting staff, kudos to our supporting staff, Amanda and Lucy, for putting this all together. There was a lot of growth and awareness that goes into what trust means. So not taking it lightly, but really providing the transparency about how that discussion went over the last several months, and then have you participate in this as attendees. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into a few questions here. So what does trust mean? The original question was, what does trust mean as infrastructure or as foundation? Let's see, who do I pick on? You got it, Brittany. Thank you.
I think one of the conversations that we all kind of came to an agreement about was, and to be quite honest, we all had a hard time agreeing with saying infrastructure and even like partnership and foundation and all these words, because it just kind of like takes away from what trust really is, which is like inherent within all of us. And we wanted to make sure that it didn't come across to where it's kind of cold and off-putting. And so I think for me, trust is something to where when we're looking in a situation, for me with talking with my community, trust is meaning that I am putting my community in charge to make decisions, and I'm going to trust to move along with whatever they decide. It's not based on what I feel like is best for them. I can't just show up and be like, hey, you guys should all invest in EV vehicles because it's best for your lifestyle. And then they're like, no. And I'm like, yes, you should trust me. That's not trust. And I think you have to understand that, especially in disenfranchised communities, we have a lot of people coming in here saying that you should trust us. You should trust us for this. You should trust us for that. We looked at the data. Your guys' air is terrible, so trust us. We know what's best for you. And this is how you should move going forward. And then sometimes they say all that, and they take all even more data, and then they kind of just disappear again. And we had nothing. And so then the community doesn't trust anybody coming in, right? And so it's like, for us, with the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce, that was the reason why we started a car share program. A lot of people are like, you're a chamber. What are you doing with EVs and zero EV and ZEV? And I think a lot of that was because we knew that the community trusted us and that we trust the community and that we had a partnership that was built. So we decided to empower our community and take a hold before somebody else just showed up and decided what was best for our community. And so a little anecdotal is that, like, when we did this, we do multimodal. One of the first things we tried to bring in were bikes. And we were like, no, like, trust us, like, these bikes are gonna be great. And everyone was like, I don't know, they're gonna clog up the streets again, because Fresno has this past history with someone dropping scooters off, and they were in the canals, and they were in the streets, and they were everywhere, and people were like, no more. You are not allowed to bring any bikes, no scooters, nothing into this community. And so when we showed up, we were like, no, it'll be good. And then we didn't listen. The community said no, and we said, no, trust us. And then the community was like, and then they were right? So the bikes got stolen, the bikes were dropped off here, they were dropped off there. It was kind of a mess. Nobody wanted to use them because they didn't trust the system, and we weren't listening to them. And so we had to completely pivot into creating a bike library system, which has done a lot better. And so I think that's the kind of situation that I hope that we all gather from this at the end, is that the community knows what's best for their community. And if you want to be able to have a proper trust with anybody, it's actually letting go of control and allowing the community to make those decisions on their own behalf.
So I have a different perspective of trust. Being from a tribal community and being tribal and born and raised in a tribal setting, my father was on the tribal council, like, you know, my siblings have served on the tribal council. We are told, we grow up with the idea that there is a trust relationship between our tribe as a government, because you have to understand, being Native is not a racial thing. It is a political status. So I am a citizen of my tribe, and as a result, because I belong to a government, like Swedish citizen, I guess, is a Swedish, belongs to the Swedish government, that we grow up knowing that there's a special trust relationship between the federal government and ourselves as a government. And, you know, those are conversations that happen very early at the table that we as children participated in. And so you grow up knowing that that trust is not trust, right? Because trust is something I have with my mom. I can trust that my mom's going to have dinner on the table for us every night. I can trust that my dad is going to make sure that wood is cut and a fire is going to keep us warm at night. So the trust is different, and it's to be broken, right? Trust comes in broken ways. People will say, well, that's so long ago. No, in 1974, the FBI surrounded my family's house because we were fishing. And they arrested my 7-year-old brother and my grandfather because they were the ones with the nets. 7 years old, taken to jail. That is the trust relationship that I grew up with. And so when I think about trust, I think of it as there's two types. There's the governmental trust, and then there's the trust that I have within my community and around. And as Brittany eloquently shared, the community knows, and then we need to have a trust relationship with them. And this panel was a little hard for me because I think it was called Trust Economy as an Infrastructure or something like that. And it really made it seem like trust is a commodity to be purchased, because when I think about infrastructure, how does infrastructure come about? It's purchased, right? You purchase the items to build the infrastructure, so it's a commodity. Economy, again, it's about money, a transaction of money. And that's not real trust. So when I think about trust coming within the tribal community, and it's very different for every tribe. We have some tribes who have very successful economic endeavors that have allowed them to excel and be at the highest level financially. And then we have other tribal communities that are so remote and rural, they're lucky if they get a visitor that year, right? You know, there's not even a tourism attached to it. So going from very poor to very wealthy, in all of those scenarios, tribes are at various levels. So, for example, the session that we just were in talked about the incentives and about why the waivers of sovereign immunity with the state agency was requesting waivers of sovereign immunity in order for tribes to receive those funds, and tribes didn't like that. Not all tribes. Some of those tribes that I mentioned that are very successful, they have full-time staff attorneys, sometimes 3 to 4 staff attorneys full-time. They have full-time financial advisors and CFOs. They have all of the tools that make it easier for them to be more comfortable with providing limited waivers of sovereign immunity as a part of doing business. Other tribes that are much smaller are like, no, this is all we have, is our ability to govern ourselves and to be sovereign. So the idea of providing any kind of limited waiver of sovereign immunity, even if it was to be helpful, is distasteful. And they don't have the additional resources to back it up. So, one of the things that I hope that I can provide in talking about tribes is that it's not a one-size-fits-all scenario. we are all very different. We're as different as talking about Asia to France to Sweden to Germany. That there is some similarities. We're all countries, right? But there's also a lot of more dissimilarities. So we can't do a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's where, hopefully, as a person who has worked in the tribal community, and I seem to have their trust. I don't know, because I think trust is also fragile. It's something you have to feed and water and grow and continue to be that trustful person. That I'm explaining to you that it's diverse. Some are rural, some are, in the urban environment. There's all levels within tribal communities, and developing trust might look different for each one of them.
On that a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about trust and the different experiences of trust. Now we're going to pivot to who. So who is the trusted partner, the ally, the representative, either with your respective communities or on the government side? We're talking about clean transportation, but maybe now you can put a face and name to who those people part of the trust might be.
I like to think that my experience in working with CARB the last few years, I think I've only engaged with them for the last 4 years, I would say, since 22, that I have found that there's a willingness in CARB, at least the people who are the public servants, to be that ally, to listen and attempt to eat the elephant, so to speak. Because, as the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so we always have to remember that the staff can only do so much, right? And then there are times we have to team up together and maybe work to change a piece of legislation, a regulation. It needs to take time for their attorneys to look at it. There's the bureaucracy. But the team within CARB can be good allies to work through that bureaucracy, and it's going to take time. So there are open ears and eyes and support within CARB that I have found have existed over the past 4 years. And again, that's just my experience from the past 4 years.
I think when I think of, I'm on the ground all the time, so I think about my community members that use our vehicles and our bikes and things like that. When it becomes like a trusted partner, I kind of have this, and this is a personal opinion of my own, is that we kind of keep going to the same people every single time. So you'll be like, oh, go to this person. They're always active in the community. They're always running. But then this same person is constantly having to do everything. They're touching every space. They're doing every single thing. And then it creates a situation to where it's like, how can you still take time to rest? How can you take time to heal and then also still be active in the community if you're constantly doing meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, going over here, going over there, talking? I think that when it comes to trusted community members, I think we need to get into the habit of maybe going to that person going, who do you know that you can point me to that's just a mom or just a school teacher? They don't do anything else. They just do this thing, which is living. So they can talk and they can do. So and I share this example all the time, but I think it's just such an important thing is our first car share user hated the idea of us bringing in the program. She was adamant about not having the program. And then she got to use it first because she said, well, let me take the first step for my community to ensure that this is safe for my community. And so then she did that. And then she was like, oh, this is good. I like it. It's perfect. In fact, let me get 5 more people to this month and 6 more people next month into this program. And she became a rally for our program, but she also became the person who calls us and says, hey, I'm just letting you know that this car came back late and dirty, so you better come check it out. Or we have community members who call us and be like, hey, just saw the car down the street. just want to know what's going on, you know? So they are the trusted members. And I think we have to get out of this concept of always going to just one person that you get so used to relying on, but then at some point we start to lose the community's voice. And so I think when I think of trusted members, I think of just everyday people. So I think that's the perfect person.
Okay, so hi. My perspective is a little bit different since I'm coming from the agency level. And so I work for the Community Air Protection Program. And that program is really driven by community members. I mean, that program, the district forms and creates a community steering committee, and that community steering committee makes decisions about ways to reduce emissions in their community. And so as far as when we talk about allies, we're talking about the people in the community. I feel like because we're all partnership, CARB, the Air District, and the community, that I mean, we act like allies, CARB and the district, and as well as the community and the community-based organizations that also play a big part in co-leading some of the actions within the program. So, thank you.
I just want to add that for when I was talking about tribes being different, so there are different types of government, and we're not so much about community per se. The tribal members themselves vote. For my tribe example, the Hoopa tribe, we are a representative government. So our tribal members vote for the people that they want to be in the leadership roles. And so and we vote specifically that those people will be helping making decisions on our behalf. So the leaders of the community are trusted. Then you have the other tribes that the leaders are not, it's not a representative government. Let's say like Pechanga, they are a true democracy. So they have two general meetings, which is anyone over the age of 18 who vote on decisions on the direction of the way in which the tribe's going to go, and they have their meetings monthly. So depending on the type of governmental infrastructure, it might be different depending on the tribe itself. And so sometimes these grant programs will say, tell us how you're going to involve the community. Well, for a tribe, it's almost already built in because they already have 2 meetings a month. They already discuss a number of topics during those meetings because typically they're 8 hours long. And so it's already built into the system. And so having to provide documentation, because again, tribal governments typically don't want their agendas and their topics of what they talked about to be public. We just have to be able to say, on this date we had this meeting, these things were discussed on this, so it's not like you have recorded minutes per se of what the public was saying, but that it is documented, and it's just a part of how tribal governments function. Is tribal members attend council meetings, they provide input, and so it's a regular ongoing thing and not necessarily something that's just a one and done.
Brittany, you receive a letter titled Dear Fresno Metro Black Chamber Leader. Jill, you receive a letter and it says, Dear Tribal Leader. Is this building trust? And maybe you could speak to that.
No. No, and I get it. It's really hard. But if you really want to send a letter to tribes, call them up, say, hi, I would like to have the name of your current tribal chairman. It's a 5-second phone call. They'll be happy to provide you with the name. You can make it a 10-second phone call if that's what you want to do, but it's a simple task. And I get it. There's 109 federally recognized tribes in California, so before that letter goes out, you're going to have 2 weeks of just calling. And then there's another 47, I think, unfederally recognized or state recognized tribes. And so that's going to be some more phone calls. So yeah, you're going to have to make 200 phone calls. But please, the Dear Tribal Leader letter. And what's even worse is if they try to do a good thing and they put the name in there and it's the chairman from 4 years ago.
No, I think I think it's about like Jill was saying earlier. I think trust is intimate. Like it's wanting to get to know somebody. It's wanting to make that connection, and it's like, how can you come and ask me what you would want me to do for you? Because a lot of times, let's be honest, sometimes it's what can you do for me, and it's like, but you didn't take the time to get to know anything about my community or about our culture. And so it's like, take the time to to do your research just as much as you would want to do with if you're applying for a job, I guess I would say. But yeah, no, definitely no. I would ignore it. But then again, I don't answer a lot of emails or letters. I'm not the CEO.
Please.
So before I came into this panel in the last week, I ended up, interacting with some of my colleagues at work that support the communities and act as liaisons to the communities. And so, my question was to them, I'm going to be on this panel, and I want to know from your perspective, like, how do you build trust with these, communities? And some of the things that they were open about was being present, being consistent, being at the table when they have meetings, when they have conversations, following up, also being really open, I think is another way, and listening to communities and taking that information back and not just having it sit on your desk, but like following through and being able to come back with with a response or whatever is needed to be able to support the community. And so anyways, just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Ever since I was a little kid, one of the things that has been instilled in us is presence. Presence is the first gift we sort of give each other, if you will. But given that we make mistakes, we're fallible, how can we course correct? As program staff reach out to your respective communities and engage with you during the financing or funding program and those periods when there isn't dollars on the streets, how would you suggest staff go about this when there isn't that period of dollars on the street, if you will, cultivate the relationships, the trust?
I would say just try to keep in contact. There are some, so I've worked with NAPEC since 2009, so I've been here for, 15 years. And I've seen a lot of staff come and go, but the interesting thing with like agency staff is typically they move around within the agency. And so what I would say is, even if your role is different and you're moving around the agency, you want to keep those relationships that you've gained with tribes so that you can continue to be that trusted person who can maybe hand off to the person that you've worked with or maintained a relationship so that you can say, oh, I trust Larry over here. I've worked with him for 10 years and, he's moving into this position and is new, but has worked with the agency for 10, like keeping those relationships going, even if you're not in the same position. I think it's always good to maintain those relationships. And, as tribal people, gosh, we want to know your grandkids. That's how far our trust goes. Like, we want to have that kind of a relationship with you that's very, long over an extended period of time. And, I kind of wanted to say, what would drive the clean incentive programs is that when we look at, like, if we're really looking at communities, we're not just going to give them cars and bikes. We're going to uplift their community. We're going to teach the mom and Joe, I always say Joe down the mechanic down the street who charges with his heart and not with the mechanic's book, that the person charging with their heart, we want to uplift that person because I'm going to trust him to work on my EV before I trust Ford to work on my EV. Most people who are in a disadvantaged community or in at a level of having to watch their money, they're not going to take it to the dealership. They're going to take it to their Uncle Joe down the road who is a certified mechanic, but we're doing absolutely nothing to uplift those people within our community that provide the ancillary support. So when we're looking at the community, it needs to be a whole organic approach. I like that. It's going to be a whole organic approach. We're going to look at the whole thing from the top to the bottom. We want to know that the preacher's in the EV. We want to give the vacation Bible school bus an EV. We want, we want all facets of the life to be touched by clean car incentives, but we have to look at it organically as a whole and not a part. There, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of all of that. I think I grew up in poverty, so I know what it's like to not have money. So, like right now, we're in a situation where I'm hearing a lot of there's no funding dollars coming down, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. I still got to keep operating. I still got to keep feeding. I still got to keep the cars running. I still got to get the bikes going. I got people relying on me to get to work, to pick up their kids, to get to the doctor's appointment. So it's like, even though there's no dollars, it goes a long way when I get an email saying, hey, just checking in. I saw your program. Congratulations on 3 years, or congratulations on getting the van pool. That doesn't cost money to send an email, like Jill is saying. It's creating those connections of like seeing those kinds of situations and it being like, okay, cool. Like that way I know down the road, I can hit you up later and be like, yeah, this is how it's going, and maybe in, 3 years? 3 years, we'll have some funding. And we will all be very comfortable with each other to be like, yeah, we made it through the thick of it, so let's keep going. So I think there's that, and I also think, to answer that part of culture, we were talking about this offline too, but just like Jill's saying, like for me in Fresno, when I go out, the first thing community members ask is what's your last name? And it's because they're trying to pinpoint me to which family I'm a part of. And I always have to be like, oh, my family's from out of town. And they're like, that doesn't matter. What's your last name? What's your mom's maiden name? You related to the Conleys? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. They're like, yeah, you're related to the Conleys. Have you met? And I'm like, okay, cool. You gotta just run with it because now I'm related to all the Conleys. It doesn't matter. And so it's like, that's the community. That's how we connect. That's how we go. And that's our culture. It's like, I couldn't just be like, I'm not telling you my mom's maiden name. Get out of my business. Then they're gonna be looking at me like, and you want to come over here and sell me an EV? Get out of here. So I think it's trust is building, and it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes effort. It takes a long time, which our EV program, we started in I wasn't here yet, but it got started in 2019. So it got hit right in the pandemic. And then there was a stop funding order, but you know what, it kept going. We just kept trucking. We kept having our online meetings and talking to people, and they were in the process since the get-go about how this program was gonna work. Then they didn't believe us because it wasn't there yet. They said, we see charging stations, but we don't see cars, and we're like, just give us a minute. We cooking, we just can't do it yet. So I think it just takes time and trust, and then we brought them in, and people were like, oh, we kind of thought you were lying after a while. We kind of just gave up on you guys. You guys kept saying, wait. And we gotten told that so many times. And so it's like, when we actually did bring the cars, they were like, oh, they for real, for real. So it's like, I think it just takes a lot of effort and time and patience. So if you expect anything to happen in 6 months, if you expect anything to happen in a year, I would even say 2 years. If you're coming into a new space and you're trying to teach somebody something completely new, which EVs are completely new to our community, then don't expect it to happen so quickly. It takes a lot of time.
So let's talk about this time dimension, but through the eyes of the community, respective communities. Jill, you talked about the pastor, you talked about the mechanic. These are all trusted allies. Brittany, you have the same in the Fresno region. Last year, CARB has helped sponsor this heavy-duty showcase out in McClellan. It's an area south of Sacramento. Had invited some local high schools who have never seen zero-emission technology in the heavy-duty space. They spent 90 minutes looking at the Tesla Semi. They never moved from that one vehicle because of that experience. There weren't tool chests that were over there. There's no wrenches. It was laptops. And suddenly this was a new experience. And the word that they came out of this experience, and I'm sharing this story because I want to go into this sort of line of thinking, was that it was fun. They have never been in an automobile that looked like a workstation. They have never serviced or seen somebody who didn't have to lift up the trunk to do their work. They simply had to plug in and look at all the error codes and messages that came from their laptop. So let's talk about this workforce sort of dimension and how it is that trust can also build. Once the assets are provided, once the infrastructure is done, where does community sort of pick up and trust that this investment is going to move the needle for their respective communities?
So I'm gonna make it quick. I think what's been interesting is that people got in the EVs and they were like, oh, these things go. Like they started zooming. I had to tell them to slow down because it's like you're wasting the battery when you do that. They're like, well, my battery's almost dead. And I'm like, you've had it for 4 hours. There's no possible way you've killed the battery that quick. So it's like, and then from there, they were like, how do I buy one? They're like, I want to own my own now. Like, and that was like a whole conversation as well that we've had with a lot of people. And we've turned to a lot of people have been able to have ownership. We had one of our customers pull up in a Tesla, and I was like, I haven't seen you in a while. And he was like, yeah, I got a Tesla. And I was like, nice. So it's like, it's kind of cool to see them grow. We've also done workforce development as well with doing the trainings for the EVSE technician, which has been interesting as well because I think like a lot of people thought like, oh, technician, a lot of hands-on, and it's like, nah, actually it's a lot of mental math, it's a lot of technology, it's a lot of like all these other parts to it that go way past that, and it's scary. Like that's so scary. Like I was just talking over lunch about how I get told this all the time. People are like, I'd rather have a car I know I can fix. Like, they're like, I can fix my Ford. And I'm like, how many times are you fixing that Ford? Like, you've been fixing it for a while. And they're like, yeah, but I know I can fix it. What am I going to do if I can't fix my EV? And so it's like, I think we need to be able to take the time to actually, like, teach people things and have them, and also, like, expect that our communities are going to get it. Like, I think there's, like, this, like, belief that, like, because you might come from a poor background or because you're disenfranchised, that you're just like not going to be able to learn technology or innovation or grow. And it's like, if you give somebody a chance, like you're saying, like when we had the big trucks, we did some at Fresno, and it's like people were like, what the wow, they're like in them, they're going through them, they're all excited, and it's like, it's so cool. And then they're realizing like how fun and easy it can be and different, but that doesn't have to mean that it's like scary. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. You have to give opportunities and options for people to be able to have access so they can learn, because I believe in my community. I know my community's smart enough to get it. I know that they're gonna be able to handle it and probably take it to a higher extreme than I can even possibly imagine. But it's like, that also, that creates that facility of like trusting and knowing my community has got it. So I hope that answered that.
I would like to see more spaces for California to take sixth graders and introduce them to EVs, because when Justin Bieber was a hot item, I guess he's still a hot item, I don't know, but he did this thing where he developed a relationship with Walmart selling nail polish. And if you were around at that time, this was pre-COVID, I mean, he was a long time ago now, everyone was like, why would Justin Bieber have a relationship with Walmart to sell nail polish? Like, that doesn't even seem to equate. But it did equate, because the biggest consumers in the United States are those children under 15. They are the biggest consumers in the market. And so he knew he was going to make millions off that it was a 3-set nail polish that had Justin Bieber's name, and he made millions off of it. And everyone was like, oh, wow, that was actually really smart. But the kids are the largest consumers, and they're the largest consumers not because they have a job, not because they get paid, but because they're like, Mom, it's only $5. And that's what Justin Bieber sold his nail polish set was, $5. $5. So kids can nickel and dime their parents to death, but they're also the biggest influencers because they can say, Mom, why don't we have an EV? I could fix it. Just let me get on my iPhone and I can fix the car right here. I was stupid enough to think that I could do a YouTube and fix the screen on my iPhone. I had no idea these things have like 1,000 tiny little screws when you take it all apart. Well, it ended up in a Ziploc bag. That was the extent of my IT innovation. But if we get so laser focused on one thing that can you imagine if the state did a 6th grade camp or a 7th grade camp for technology to introduce children into EVs and repairing EVs? All our vouchers would be gone. All of the incentives would be used up because they would be the ones to influence their parents to it. So when, it's not just the preacher, it's the kids we have to get in here, and they're going to be the ones fixing the car. I mean, really? So why aren't we taking a holistic approach? I don't know, maybe babies in the womb can listen to things too and communicate. I mean, you have no idea, right? Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole.
I'm going to track right with you, Jill. When the state started investing in clean transportation, zero emission programs, they started, of course, at the colleges, community colleges in particular, and they got some programs going. This is a few years ago, and folks at the community colleges were saying, you're not early enough. Go to the high schools. So the state invested in the high schools, zero emission, high voltage programs, stood up about 71 of them in the state, and they said, you're not going early enough. And true story, this is a lived experience, and finally it hit. I was at an event where a middle school, Los Angeles Unified School District, had an after-school hydrogen fuel cell building program sponsored by Toyota, 3D printed, and it was just alive with energy of 7th and 8th graders going right at it. And so it's very, very successful. It's been replicated, of course, not just in California. But let's talk about that generation, that K-12, and their experience with respect to your being leaders and instilling trust, but how it is that they look at this entire clean transportation, zero emission world and have a trust about not only the people that are in it, but also about the technology and potentially a future career pathway.
Who here knows what thank you. Who here knows what retreads are? Yeah. Okay, retread tires are something I grew up with because my parents couldn't ever afford a brand new set of tires. So what the tire company or tire shop does is they put new treads on old tires, and it's really for people who don't have money to buy a full set of tires. And believe me, tires are expensive. That's why I'm always laughing, because I have this thing where I look at BMWs and Teslas, and oftentimes their tires are bald, and it's because the people who own them can't afford to buy the tires because they're like $1,400 a piece. So when you're, ladies, when you're with the poser, gentlemen too, when their tires are bald, they got a fancy car, not where you want to be. But when you come from a place, and there are still people to this day who don't go to Tetra Tire or, I don't know, the tire shop's names, they go to the guy, Joe's Tires down the road, right? Because Joe Tires down the road buy tires from these tire shops that the people, they need a new set because it's a new year. not because the tread is gone, but because they just need a new set in their head. So they sell those those tires cheaply to these other tire shops who buy them and put them on people's car for a much more reasonable price, $200. That's how much, you know, four sets of tires. And when you're looking at things like that microscopically, buying a $40,000 vehicle is not something you do every day. It's not something, I mean, it might be something you do once in a lifetime, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to buy the old car, right? The used car that I'm going to get my values worth there. That when you are trying to sell this new technology, and we need to because the old cars are still on the road, Uncle Joe's still fixing my car and it's still making it on the road. I just got a new, you know, alternator put in, blah, blah, blah. The new car is just not attractive. It doesn't really matter. So we have to really be, again, organically. We got to think about things. I love that word. We got to think about it organically, you know, almost in a meditative state, like that. How we move the needle forward is looking at the whole picture, from the ground up, from the babies to the adults. And I am so shocked that I was right about this with being too late, high school's too late. You know, because it is. They already know what they want. It's the middle schoolers who are still trying to figure out what they want to do. The high schoolers have already determined what they want to do. We need the middle school kids to be in there fixing our car. And my grandson is perfect age to anyone, just FYI, because if I ever get an EV, he would have to be the one fixing it for me, because he has to fix my phone for me, just the software stuff. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
I think when it comes to like getting the youth into anything, I think it always kind of creates like maybe it's because I'm a zillennial. So I kind of am on like a little bit of a cusp of something, but I always hear people go like, oh, how do we get the youth to get into it? And I'm like, first of all, they already know about it. I think like when it comes to like adopting better technology, there is nothing that is difficult to get someone who is younger, their mindset into that, because especially right now, all they know is technology, which is kind of interesting because now there's like this whole like, anyway, so I'm not gonna get into that. So I think like one of the things like maybe it is not necessarily like how do we get them to understand it, it's just give it to them because they're already into it. Like there's no, you're not gonna need to convince the 16-year-old that they need an electric vehicle, okay? They're gonna be like, heck yeah, I want an electric vehicle. I want the Lucid, actually, because it looks really nice. And you're gonna be like, that's the most expensive one you wanted? And they're like, yes. So it's like, I think they already are on track to that. I think when you look at the situation about how do we get the youth into innovation, I think it's a level of being holistic and organic. I think we're not looking at the whole picture of what the younger generations are dealing with right now. Like they're getting technology shoved down their throats to the point that they don't want it anymore. But also we're looking at a situation to where it's like, oh, this will help your air and this will help you breathe better and this is why we're moving over here to clean energy. They don't care about clean energy, about healing better. They're trying to figure out how are they going to figure out, is this going to be a career that's going to actually be worthwhile? Because you're telling me to go to college, you're telling me to get a degree. I'm not going to have a job after this. So is this a career that's going to actually get me someplace? Or is this going to be like the last time we told everybody to get into tech and now AI is taking our jobs? So it's like, I think there needs to be like a little bit more of a like what is our actual long-term goals with some of our stuff that we want to do, and what does that actually look like? Like I was talking about is at lunch too, was like once, I think it was a Cal Matters report, but it's like once we get really pushed over to EVs, mechanics jobs are going to become more and more obsolete. I have had an EV for 5 years and I have taken it into the shop once because it was a bolt and they had to replace that battery. That was it. Besides the regular maintenance of an air filter change and my new tires, I don't even have to do my brakes because I do regenerative braking. So it's like, you have to understand, like, with new tech comes new jobs, but a lot of less jobs. And so you're expecting the youth to want to take on something, but also you have to be like, yeah, and we've projected that you will have job security at 40 and you will be able to retire and you're gonna have money and this is a lucrative place for you to go. And then they're gonna be like, okay, bet, point me in the right direction, because right now all I see is no jobs, no money, nothing, everything's dried up and everything costs too much. So I think, respectfully, I think that's kind of like what it comes to.
Great, thank you, Brittany. Real quickly, STEAM. We've heard of STEM. Have you heard of STEAM, the A piece? So a few years ago, the state invested in the high school automotive ZEV programs. Not all the students were interested in the STEAM part of it all. So the A became important. And this goes to the sort of the youth discussion we're having now, which is the A piece, the arts. The arts is the communication piece. It's the linguistic. It is how youth take care of communicating EVs to their communities, tribal or otherwise. And so that became a really, really important lesson. And what happened was these schools were taking on and using the school colors, their graphics, to do the electric vehicles in their own sort of school colors. But they also use it as a communication device with their communities in their respective languages. So that's just a little sidebar. Next question is for Adriana. We're in a room full of subject matter experts, if you will. How does a program staff like yourself take this conversation, what our fellow panelists have said, and weave that into either our conversations with staff or through our program solicitations? I don't remember. No, I'll take that back.
Do we want to talk about trade-offs? Is that...
Let's talk a little bit about trade-offs, what you do and how you take these conversations and the community voices, if you will, into your work. And how does that affect you, and how do you materialize it as what you've heard?
Yeah, so as far as trade-offs, so we understand that the trade-offs are necessary, that we have to be able to give up something to get something in return. And so with the Community Air Protection Program, I'm gonna just kind of switch it up a little bit and talk about what I do, since that's also important relating to the program that I work with. So with the Community Emission Program, part of the trust building requires us to be able to develop genuine collaborative relationships with the communities, and a lot of that work is done through trust-based outreach, air quality education, as well as time. And so a lot of the time is spent on the community emission reduction plans that are put together. They're the heart of the community process. And so community steering committees are formed within the districts, or within, in the communities. And so these communities end up helping to help guide, they help shape what goes into these community emission reduction plans that are put together. And these plans can take like a year to 2 years to be able to implement. And so as a result of this, the long timelines that, that this implementation can take to implement the emission reductions, the gains from that is that you're able to work the district and CARB. We're able to build stronger relationships with the communities, and they're able to be more informed, they're able to feel more empowered, and they're able to align better with some of the solutions that are going to be implemented within the community. And so.
Great, thank you, Adriana. How about we give a nice warm applause to the panel members? Great, thank you. We're now going to have questions from the room, and then we'll take questions from online. If you're online, please go ahead and raise your hand to let staff know that you have a question, and then Cynthia will be passing along the microphone. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lydia with the Sac Metro Air District. I help administer the Clean Cars for All program in Sacramento, and I participate in community outreach events, and so I'll do tabling, advertising the Clean Cars for All program. And I've had this experience a couple times now where a member of the community will ask me directly, do you drive an EV? And the answer for me personally is no. And then in that moment, it's kind of almost like a gotcha. Like, oh, you know, how can you ask me to drive an EV if you don't drive one yourself? And I've kind of struggled with like the best response to that question or that moment. And I was wondering if you have any advice of how I would respond.
I would be honest on why you don't have an EV. Like, I think people think that like EVs are always the answer, and sometimes they're not. Like, if you live in a rural area and you're driving into town every single day back and forth, and you rent an apartment that doesn't have charging stations, and there's no charging stations in your town, then it's not the best for you. If you are, you know, working in a career where you are constantly going from one side of the state to the other side of the state, EVs aren't practical. But I also think that it's the best to actually educate about EVs. So if I'm going to sell an EV, then I need to know what range anxiety means. I need to know what charging stations are in that town that I'm going to be tabling at. I need to know, like, what is the cost of charging an EV? And then also be realistic about how much that registration costs, because it just paid $500 this last month. Like, these are some serious conversations to have with somebody, because when somebody's going to make this purchase, they're affecting their entire life with their mobility. And then it's like, I have, like, when I first got my EV, everybody in my place is like looking at me and be like, I don't know why you got that EV. That was the stupidest idea you've ever made. You have no miles. And it was like, because they were like basing it off of the Leaf that only had like 60 miles at the time. And I was like, no, I swear I have miles. And they were like, no, you don't. So it's like, I think like technology is changing so quickly. Like, even our charge times have dropped. I don't know, I don't have the newer model, but I think they're like 30 minutes, which is crazy to me. So it's like, those kinds of things will help you be able to say like, no, I don't have an EV for these reasons, but here is how an EV could be better for your life. So let me learn about what your life looks like real quick, and let's make that decision on whether or not this is best for you, so you don't feel like you're just selling something to somebody, but you're actually making that decision and that choice with them. That's my opinion.
Yeah, real quickly on the response. Yeah, thank you, Brittany. Years ago I was asked that same question. What was your first car? And then it sort of got into these exotic cars, fast cars, classic cars, and my response was an Orange County Transit Authority bus pass. And then it shifted to a light rail, so it's electric. But you know, it's just being honest with your experience and your economics and your kind of whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Sequoia Erasmus. I serve as the Associate Deputy Director of Equity and Engagement with the California Transportation Commission. And I have kind of a comment first and then a question. I also co-facilitate with Caltrans and the California State Transportation Agency and Equity Advisory Committee. And we kind of try to help make recommendations and serve an advisory capacity to some of our state's funding programs and our guidelines and things like that. Sorry, that's more related to my question. My comment, though, is that I just really appreciated hearing what I frame in my mind as frameworks for a just transition. And a lot of times we're focused on building out or building in the future or building kind of from what we have now. But what I heard a lot was like, we have to pay attention to who's coming and how to support them. And that is just transition work. And I appreciate that conversation. And so my question, kind of back to the Equity Advisory Committee and guidelines and things like that, I think one thing we really struggle with as state agencies is creating funding guidelines and programs that have pathways for this kind of trust to be legible within our reviewing processes, within the language that is being submitted, within the way we understand how projects get implemented. And I was just wondering, while I was listening, is what are some experiences or what some examples that you might be able, maybe you don't have any, but if you have any examples of funding programs out there that you have applied to, that the language really uplifted this work that you're talking about, that we can really talk about in this narrative way, and I think a lot of us really understand it as people to people, but as people to agencies, number one, how can we do a better job of creating pathways for these narratives to be legible and for you to be able to tell the story that we can receive and then do something with? And then just kind of like language-wise, what's working, what's not working, how can we do better so that we're not breaking trust or creating like broken relationships in order to just apply for funding? That's my question.
Well, I've never seen an uplifting grant application. They're, they're usually the thing that you want to stab your eyes out with a pencil. But I would say some of the easiest applications that I've seen are those with philanthropic organizations. And that's because they already know what they want, what their expectations are. So they have it very clear in their mind what they want. And typically, they're like 500 characters, not even words, characters. Tell us what your need is in 500 characters. Tell us how this work will change what you're going to do, 500 characters. Like 500 characters, like just the facts, ma'am. And that takes out the mystery of like, we would like to know your project objectives and how this is going to fulfill the systemic need that rises on the horizon of 2029 in the year of the lunar cycle. Like, you know, the language they use, you're like, oh my gosh, like EPA is notorious for this. You have to go back to their strategic plan that they wrote, right? And then it's outdated by 1 year, so you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to use their strategic plan even though it's outdated and I have to say how I'm going to meet their objectives. Well, funders don't do that. I mean, philanthropic funders don't do that. They already know exactly what they want to fund. They know what that looks like. That's why they only need 500 characters for you to use and say this is what you're going to do, because they already know, right? But sometimes it's like you're having to tell the agency what they already are supposed to be doing anyway. So the best that makes a smile on my face is the philanthropic applications, because they're so quick and easy. And then they might be a little light on like the budget and how that looks, but that's because in that relationship, when they choose an applicant, it's in that process, that relationship process, that they're going to refine the budget and how much they can provide to you. So it might be a little bit more work on the state side, but I think, you know, that would be make it KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid kind of thing. That, you know, you know what objectives you're going to need. You don't need a person writing the grant to reiterate your objectives to you. You already know that. You just need to know the need and what the project will do and what a difference it'll make. So keeping it simple. That's what I would want in a grant application.
Hi, I'm Annika Osborne with Cool the Earth and the Ride and Drive Clean initiative. So we do EV and e-bike outreach and education throughout the Bay Area. And so when we work in more disadvantaged communities, we are partnering very closely with CBOs and sort of train the trainers. We have like a knowledge sharing opportunities, so we understand their communities, and we're sort of come in as the subject matter experts on EVs and e-bikes. So oftentimes they'll provide like the Spanish translation or different language translation, and we'll do the English, they'll do the Spanish. So they tend to become now subject matter experts, and they love EVs and they want to get an EV, but because they have a job at a CBO, they don't qualify for any of the grants. So they would love to go out in their community with EVs and showcase, you know, to their community members, who many of them do qualify for the grants. So I guess, I don't know if it's a comment or a question, but like it's sort of that thing of like, you know, they want to be able to like walk the walk before they're telling their community members to go EV. And it's hard for them because affordability, and then another thing is in many of these communities, like all the charging cables have been cut. So how do we move beyond here and allow our CBOs to be like the leaders in EVs that they want to be?
Totally happened overnight. I feel like I'm not I don't know how I could answer that in full detail. I just know that on our end, we were able to get a lot of our vehicles because we were through the transformative climate communities, thank you, grant, which is what allowed us to be able to make the purchase of like we have a lot of EVs for our car share. So I think maybe that's like something to maybe do a little bit more research on. I'm not quite sure what it would look like for CBOs to be able to get a car, but maybe even if it's possible for them and if it's in their budget to like maybe go through the process of a CDFI financing option. I know like even our local CDFI is doing like really good loans for like EVs and businesses, and so maybe that could be something that they could look into. I think that's about as far as my knowledge would be able to stretch to.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Jasmine Rocha. I'm the Outreach Partnerships Manager with the Access Clean California project at Grid Alternatives. What are some ways that programs have currently or in the recent past betrayed your trust? And this is specifically for Jill and Brittany. And what was done, or like what recommendations do you have to sort of rectify or remedy that betrayal?
I have a recent example, and it's not in the EV space. So I was at an event, and a gentleman said, "Oh, hey, can I take your picture? Like, I'm so excited to be here, blah, blah, blah." Okay, all right. And then he later said, "Can I get your phone number? Because I really, I have some business that I want us to discuss. I have some things for the tribes, want to build a health clinic for tribes, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. And he got my phone number, because he texted me the picture, and then he got my email and another person's email. And I got an email from them, and I see on his website is my picture and other people that I know that was at the event. Our pictures are up. The tribes that we represent, or that we're from, are up. And the intention was to make it look as though he was engaged in doing business with us. So I was just flabbergasted, and somebody, I don't know if she's here in the room, asked me today if we could take a picture, and it was the first time in my life that I was like, what are you going to do with this picture? Like, you're not going to put it on your website, are you? Because there are still people out there attempting to do those things. So you can imagine, I wrote in a hot minute, I sent him an email and said, "Take my picture down. You're using it to lure tribes to your website. I don't appreciate it." Like it was, yeah, I had horns growing out of my head because this was how I was taken advantage of. Now, if I look at like the work that NAPEC does, we had some graphics that were done and specific to tribalize the message, and it's fine that it was used, but somebody turned around and attempted to use the same graphic to promote a similar project and never said boo to us. They literally just captured it off a website, and when they had trouble changing the graphics was when they reached out to us. And I really felt it was really kind of distasteful. Not that I wouldn't have let that person use it. I would have wholeheartedly let that person use it, but it was just done in a really back room kind of way that didn't set well with me. And I think when those things happen, you have to call them out. Right, and to this young woman who was talking about not owning an EV, like absolutely, one of the first things I said when we got involved in this space was I need to figure out, I was needing a new car anyway, but new to me car. I went and bought a hybrid. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to be able to speak from a point of knowledge, and I wasn't going to fake it. I wasn't going to lie. Like her suggestion to say why you don't own an EV is very good, because it makes you appear as though you're trying to sell something that's not real. So you have to address those things, and believe it or not, those kinds of things still happen in this space. And I think, the only way to prevent it is to have open communication and an open dialogue, and call it out if you see it as something like that, because there's, you know, it could be a mix-up, right? It could be that a misunderstanding or something, but at the same time, it's better to not assume things and to address it, for sure. But yeah, now I'm cautious about my picture being taken.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Stubbs, Senior Project Manager at Emergent Labs. And my question is a two-parter for Brittany and Jill, and then also for you, Adriana. So in y'all's examples, when you were talking about trust, it was done and built up interpersonally and intimately. However, when it came to adoption of clean technology, it was in the case of sole ownership. And so I'm curious about how do y'all keep the through line of communal engagement through initial approach of clean technology, through the adoption of it, and in avoiding isolation and keeping that holistic, organic approach that you were talking about, Jill. So like not solely focusing on youth, but like older folks or like middle-aged folks, just to keep adoption communal and not just, oh, now I have a Tesla and like I'm good to go and don't need to use car share anymore. And then for Jill, and then not for Jill, for Adriana, the question is, how can CARB and other governmental agencies help to fund that adoption of an ecosystem level communal way forward of maybe funding certification for mechanics or maybe doing other things that help with adoption to keep it communal and not just people buy a vehicle and then that's it?
Speaking on the communal aspect, and while yes, we have had people purchase a car, we've had, I think out of over 200 users that we've had like maybe 4 people purchase a vehicle. A lot of people still stay in the program. It's perfect for them because they don't have to worry about insurance. They don't have to worry about car payments. They don't have to worry about anything. The car is there. And if it isn't there when they need it, they're calling us up and saying, hey, I need a car on the fly. And of course, we just zhuzh everything around and get them a car on the fly whenever we need to. So it does stay communal. And I think what's interesting is that if you asked us like who's using your vehicles, what's the age range, I would have to say that it's literally the whole entire age range. It's like from our first adopted, one of our protectors and community leaders, she's an elderly woman, and she uses the car to go to church every Sunday, and also she gets it washed and shows it off as well too, because she likes to do that. And so, but then we also have our youngest being 21 who are like using it and they're like, I need to do some DoorDash, or I need to get where I need to go for school and things like that. So yeah, I think for us, especially with the car program, because it's so popular and maybe because our town is so small and the program is really affordable, once it kicked off, it kicked off. Like, we've got wait lists. We are trying to get more people in the program. We don't have enough cars to continue going. Like, we are at max capacity. We're always operating in max capacity. So usually it's like every month we'll let like 4 or 5 more people in, and then suddenly we'll be able to do a big push and let 10 people in. But for us, I think once it got built and everyone heard about it, it kind of took itself together. When it comes to our other program, like our e-bike program, it's a little bit difficult because Fresno is really hot. It's like it can get up to, last summer was nice and cool, but the summer before that, it was 99 at night, and it was 110, 15 during the day, and we don't have trees. It's just dirt out there. So that took a long time for people to really be like, yeah, it's worth riding a bike. So I think that one, it actually helped more for our youth because college students were able to actually use that as a system. And while we had to end up doing that as like a library, it has been really well, and it's taken off at some of the college campuses. So that's been nice too. But yeah, I think I think people at first kind of turn their nose up to the idea, but then once they realize like, I can just use the car when I need it and I don't have to use it all the time, it's like, it does stay communal. And let me tell you something, they hold us accountable every day. If there is a new scratch, if the car is dirty, if someone before had used that car and they said, this is the 3rd time that person has used this car, and I'm sick and tired of them leaving it dirty. I've gotten into cars and there's been like, someone left a note in there and said like, clean up after yourself. Like, so it's like it's a whole community. There's the community part that we're in, and then there's the community part that they're in. So it's a whole thing. So I think it's a beautiful system. I love it. I love seeing people kind of take care of things. It also gives us a note, like maybe we need to like have another meeting and talk to some people. But it's been really good. I think it's been a really good community.
Yeah, I think the same things. You know, it stays community because it's a part of the community. And believe it or not, I think there are several tribes that are ripe for a ride and share program and would love to have a ride and share program, because you know the cost of car insurance, registration, like all these other things that cost so much. In just owning a car, it would be much simpler to just use a car when I needed it, when I needed to go grocery shopping, and then I'm done, you know, one and done. And to keep those programs, we don't have a bicycle program, but I was thinking to myself, you know, whenever I travel, I'm fortunate enough to travel to DC, I like to try to bring one of my grandkids with us, and we will do a midnight Capitol tours on the e-bikes, where we're just driving around looking at all the monuments in the middle of the night, because there's no people there, there's nobody on the road. I know they say you have to be 18 to be on those things, but whatever. I'm the grandma, so he's going to be safe with me. But being able to do that, and that would be cool for an e-bike. If there are things in the community that you might not know as a community, that it would be cool to have these, you know, pre-made maps to just do a community tour at midnight, even if it's 99 degrees. It might be okay. But I think that in general, the communities, you know, once they have something that they like, they're going to want to keep it nice. You know, they want it to be available for the next person. So it'll just keep going on and on. So I think that's just the nature of the beast.
Great, thank you. Let me check with Olivia, see if we have any questions, comments online. Okay, one more very, very quick. Yes. Sorry, yeah.
Thank you so much for everything you've shared from a programmatic perspective and different things. My name is Nydia. I work with GoBiz. I'm the Zev Equity advocate. And I loved hearing from all of you your perspective on moving at the speed of trust. This is a phrase that's really resonating with me from everything that each of you has shared, because so many of us working on the agency side are pushed through grant cycles and pushed through having you apply and deadlines, and the relationships don't get built that way. So I wanted just to make a comment for the people who are running the programs and for all of us who are learning how to move in those circles and build those relationships, that what you said about being able to introduce the person who's potentially going to be in your role when you leave, so that those programs and those communities continue to benefit and reap the rewards of the relationships that you've built. I just wanted to leave with that comment, because all of you have said it in one way or another, that moving at the speed of trust is what's going to make this work for us to be able to manage the money in the way that it needs to go for the communities that matter.
Great, thank you, Nydia. And how about we give a nice warm of applause to our panel members. Good, thank you. And thank you for attending today.